They transferred us to Baraksat prison, blindfolded and handcuffed, our zip ties so tight that our wrists were bleeding. 3 soldiers severely beat me on the way and accused me of being a terrorist.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. Some good news. The mighty United Auto Workers Union voted to get rid of its Israel bonds. They currently have some $400,000 invested in Israeli apartheid and genocide. And it wasn't just a resolution voted by the membership. They actually amended their constitution so that the UAW won't hold Israel bonds. This movement in the UAW to get rid of the bonds actually started 50 years ago. In 1973, several thousand Arab UAW members went on strike for several days trying to get their union to dump the bonds. In Norway, a unique effort to try to publicize the terrible situation of Dr. Abu Safiya. Some good news on this front. The famous entertainer and educator for little children, Miss Rachel, called for Dr. Abu Safiya's freedom. And this effort from Code Pink in Chicago at the American Medical Association's convention.
Today is the second to last day of the American Medical Association's conference, which is a pivotal moment because we are directly faced with an American association that has been complicit in the genocide of the Palestinian people, its infrastructure, and its professionals. To date, Israel has killed 1,571 healthcare workers, imprisoned 446, and disappeared 5 healthcare workers in Gaza since October of 2023. One of those detained is Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, and not only is he the representation of the dozens of healthcare workers that have been killed, imprisoned, and kidnapped by Israeli forces, but also the political prisoners movement as a whole. We are their voice as they are trapped in Israeli torture camps, and their freedom is the freedom of Palestine. The recent codification of the execution of Palestinian prisoners in Israel and the recent news that Dr. Abu Safiya has been placed in solitary confinement, all because he stood with his patients during a U.S.-backed genocide, poses a grave threat to Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya's life and every other healthcare worker detained in illegal Israeli torture camps.
Doctors take a pledge to do no harm. And yesterday I was at their convention, and they say, we fight for doctors. We fight for you, doctors. But where are they? Where is their voice in fighting for the doctors that are imprisoned in Israel? They are imprisoned for taking care of their patients, including a pediatrician taking care of children. What have we become? That it is okay that we do not speak out, that we do not fight for, that we do not call out the murder of doctors, the murder of children, the murder of innocent people, that we have only received silence from the AMA is horrifying. It's horrifying. We cannot normalize this barbarism, this violence that is happening by Israel to Palestinian people. We must continue to speak out. We cannot be silent, because this is about human life. Who are we if we do not speak up for human life? Who is the AMA? How can they say they fight for doctors when they are not fighting for the doctors in Palestine? and also for the doctors and caregivers in Lebanon that are being targeted just as they were in Gaza. They are being targeted in Lebanon. And until we speak up, doctors, innocent people, children will continue to be targeted, and it must end.
In New York City, a rally on the steps of the famed public library. In our Connecticut effort, the open letter from prominent people calling for the doctor's freedom, there were some new names. Brad Lander, former New York City comptroller and ally of Mayor Mamdani. Howie Hawkins, former presidential candidate of the Green Party. And Fuad Dakwar, the actor and composer just seen in the presentation Amo Giuliano. Outside the Tony Awards, a rally by Broadway Voices for Palestine.
It is our duty to fight for freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our change.
Inside, Moroccan-American Louis Bourgui made an acceptance speech that included these words.
Sometimes humanity needs a fantastical lens outside of ourselves to look at and explore questions about our own nature. Vampires represent those who have shunned their own humanity in order to achieve a non-existent sense of superiority. The billionaires will never find happiness from their money. The colonizers will never find fulfillment from the land and lives they steal. The fascists will never find meaning from their conformity, not in this lifetime or eternity. People like to say that theater is a form of escape, but I've found more than ever that in this season and time that the theater is one of the last places people can come to worship the power of true collective human presence. We take a moment to recondition our addiction to desensitization. We ask how we can see ourselves in a stranger's story and then carry that sentiment out into the world that needs us to ask that more than ever. This is dedicated to the beautiful tapestry of immigrant families who make this country really special. May you one day not have to audition for the empathy that should be freely given by this country that benefits from your beauty. For the queer and trans communities who have and always will exist no matter what people in power try to take away from them. For the people of Palestine who deserve to live a free life, a full life without occupation. For Arab theater makers and artists, may we continue to tell our stories and show our faces so our humanity becomes undeniable and our families can no longer be written off as merely collateral damage.
An alarming tweet from a man in Gaza named Tamer Nahed. He writes, "A very dangerous new nightmare we are living in Gaza City, and no one in the world is paying attention to it. Days ago, the Israeli army installed a huge military cranes, each about 30 meters tall, on the eastern areas it controls. These cranes are equipped with machine guns and cameras, and they fire randomly and almost continuously at tents, streets, and exposed neighborhoods. Gaza City is extremely narrow, only 10 kilometers wide. A single crane at that height is enough to expose the entire city from east to west. Every street, every square, every tent, every house has become completely exposed. There was no place to hide and not a single moment of safety. He had a further tweet showing a video of a number of men gathered around a table, and then one of them collapses after being shot. So there's a memorandum of understanding with Iran, and Trump wants to put the war in the rearview mirror. Amos Harel, the military affairs writer for Haaretz, calls it an agreement of American surrender. Timothy Snyder, the eminent historian at Yale and now at the University of Toronto, calls it a complete Iranian victory, humiliation, and he mentions surrender. Let's take a look at the agreements. The Strait of Hormuz reopens, but the Memorandum of Understanding doesn't say they'll freely open up the way it was before, as it was before the war. Part of it reads, Islamic Republic of Iran will conduct dialogue with the Sultanate of Oman to define the future administration and maritime services in the Strait of Hormuz. The potentates of Oman and Iran define the future. There is nothing in the agreements on Iran's long-range missiles, nor about its allied or proxy forces like Hezbollah. There is, of course, no regime change and nothing that would support the rights of Iranians living in that fascist state. There is no compensation, not even for the families of the 100 children who were blown up the first day of the war. There is $300 billion of investments that supposedly the U.S. will encourage. Who will pay for that? There is no mention of Palestinians. On nuclear, there's a pledge that Iran will not go for the nuclear bomb and will downblend its current enriched uranium so it's no longer capable of being enriched to bomb-level capacity. There's a pledge there, but there's no inspections of any kind mentioned in this memorandum or any of the measures that were written out in the agreement during the Obama era. Professor Timothy Snyder uses the phrase Iranian win, but clearly he doesn't mean that it's a win for the Iranian people. On his Substack, he wrote, Trump had been the, quote, architect of the renewal of the atrocious regime in Tehran. By attacking Iran, he generated sympathy for torturers and murderers, unquote. And perhaps the biggest gift for the Iranian regime is that Trump has proved something that was only theoretical until now. He proved that Iran could close the Strait of Hormuz, and that would cause huge financial pain. As one writer posted, they don't need nuclear weapons. They have the on-off switch for the Strait of Hormuz. And there's the money costs, immense to Iran and pretty substantial to the U.S. This New York Times article puts the U.S. financial cost of the war at $132 billion. So this war was quite a failure for the MAGA regime and for the Israeli war whisperers. How do we show this simply and clearly to the U.S. public? How do we make the warmongers pay? At the Palestine Museum US a few weeks ago, people heard from sailors who were on boats of the global Samud flotilla. We had their remarks and Q&A last week. I want to play one more of that and then have some of what two doctors said at the event. So you've mentioned a couple times that hideous video with Ben Gvir gloating as people were tortured. And I think you hinted that you were in that picture. Were one of you in it? And if so, what was that like in that stress position? And if not, what did people tell you about it?
Yeah, so I'm in that video. You wouldn't be able to recognize me because it's just my butt in the air. But yeah, yeah. The stress position thing is it's one of their favorite tools. It doesn't leave injuries like particularly visible, but basically they make you kneel on the ground. Maybe your hands are behind your back, or if you're lucky, they're in front of you so you can sort of support some of your weight. All of us were put in that position at various times, including Freddie during the first interception. But yeah, it was during the making of that video and the disembarkation of both of the ships that many of us were put in that position. And they were making us listen to the Israeli national anthem on repeat. And somebody managed to keep their head on enough that they counted how many times. And so we started figuring out how much time. But I think we were in that position for about 3 hours continuously. And yeah, without being dramatic, I would say it was extremely unpleasant. Yeah, a lot of people, and they made a lot of like older people who are not in good shape do it as well. So it was extremely painful.
We're going to talk about two specific things. I'm going to talk about the fact that in Israel there are hundreds of hostages in prisons who have been there for months and even years. Only about 30% of them have ever been charged with a crime. 70% are just being held on administrative security detention, which can be renewed every 6 months, and that's usually a 3 or 4 minute court hearing, often without a lawyer. Amongst that group are around 100 healthcare workers, which includes 18 physicians, one of whom, Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, who is on this poster in front of me, who has been held since December 27th, 2024, in horrific conditions. The Israel Human Rights Organization, physician, 30-year-old orthopedic surgeon. I was arrested by the military while working in the hospital, still wearing my medical uniform. They stripped us down to our underwear and took us outside in the rain. Inside the hospital, they repeatedly kicked me in the stomach, causing me to develop hernias in my testicles and abdomen. They transferred us to Baraksat prison, blindfolded and handcuffed, our zip ties so tight that our wrists were bleeding. 3 soldiers severely beat me on the way and accused me of being a terrorist. I was detained in the prison for 69 days, including 8 straight days of torture, during which they put me in the disco room, which is a room with blaring lights, very loud, deafening music that's played 24/7. We were beaten while blindfolded and handcuffed and forced to lay on the bare floor because there were no mattresses. If we fell asleep, we were kicked until we were awake. We were not given bathroom privileges, and so we urinated and defecated on ourselves. We were only given half a loaf of moldy bread a day. For 6 days, they tortured me by tying my hands and feet behind me while seated in a chair, hitting me in the stomach, slapping me while I was blindfolded. This went on for an entire day, each day. Some detainees went through this for even more days than me. Dogs were brought in every 2 or 3 days, every day during Ramadan, at a time that coincided with the breaking the fast in the evening and the last meal of the night before day began. The physical abuse, in addition to the physical abuse, they constantly insulted and degraded us with curses and degrading language. We were kept blindfolded at almost all times with our hands cuffed in front. The use of the bathroom, as I said, when we did have bathroom privileges, we had to remain blindfolded at all times. After this time, they transferred me to another prison where I was seen by a doctor who diagnosed my hernia but refused to treat me. He said I needed surgery, but declined to actually arrange for me to have surgery. I was brought back to the first prison later that day, and once I arrived there, I was again severely beaten, with my head being slammed into the floor, rubbing my face in the sand, kicking and punching me. 26 more days, they transferred me to Ashkelon for more interrogation, where another doctor refused to remove my blindfold and instead slapped me and refused to treat me. They shaved my head and beard, showered me, and said I smelled unbearable. I told this doctor from behind my blindfold, "We're professional colleagues. You're meant to treat me humanely." He began slapping me and said, "You are a terrorist." When asked why I had not been taken for surgery, he said he took note, asked me about the hernia, and I told him it was caused by the soldiers. So I won't finish this except to skip down to one of the issues which we have recently learned not been a rare isolated event, but it's systemic, it's systematic, it's part of the program, and that's sexual abuse of Palestinian prisoners. I heard rumors about cases of rape, though I don't know the actual names of the victims. I do know that one was a 70-year-old man from the M family. They had him repeatedly raped by a dog. Another detainee was beaten to death. And Dr. Adnan Al-Bursh, an orthopedic surgeon from Gaza, was martyred here on Ward 23 after being raped with a metal pole that was inserted violently, causing internal tears of his rectum and colon, and denied any surgical care afterwards. This is the everyday life of thousands of Palestinians with no hope. No hope. They don't know where they are. In the case of Dr. Abu Safiya, he is being held in the worst of the worst, which is entirely underground. He doesn't know whether it's day or night. He doesn't know how many days he's been there. Since he was abducted on the 27th of December in 2024 until today, he's only had 5 visits from a lawyer. And just a month ago, his detention was extended another 6 months. So we are trying everything we can to get him released. With Doctors Against Genocide, we go to Washington every month. We have 30 or 40 appointments with legislative offices. This is a point that we bring up every single time. On our last visit, we had a petition that we took to the Washington offices of the American Medical Association. When we got there, a guard in front of the building said, "Oh, they moved out of here a couple of weeks ago," which we knew was a lie. But she continued to say that. She finally got her supervisor to come down and said, "Well, you have to have an appointment to get into the building." And we said, "Well, you need to get your story straight with your guard. She says that they're not even here anymore." So we caught them in that lie. In addition to that, we do 2 weekly vigils, one at the Bridgeport train station, one at Yale New Haven Hospital. We just did our 84th consecutive vigil at Yale New Haven Hospital last week. It's from noon until 1. Anybody, thank you, but what I tell people is, yeah, we've done that for 84 weeks for 1 hour a week. The people in Gaza have been going through this for 137 weeks, 24/7. So I appreciate the appreciation, but it's very little compared to what they're going through. So we would welcome anyone who wants to come join us once or every week. I have friends here who are always there, except when they break their leg.
What day is it?
It's on Tuesdays. So it's at the corner of York and Cedar Street. There's a bunch of food carts, and so there's lots of people milling around, and and there's a pamphlet. I have some pamphlets in the back that we hand out. It's a new one every week. It's sort of some news items and some action items and so forth. And so that's what we do here. And we know that around the country and in many places in Europe, people are doing the same thing. And that's why, and I'll stop with this, in the past 2 years, public polls, particularly the Pew poll, showed that American approval of Israel was up here and approval of Palestinians was down here. And now it's like this. And so we're getting close to a tipping point because our governments have not yet responded to public opinion. But we're getting closer, and we see that in Washington.
That's our program for today. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.